So very good evening to everyone. Good morning as well to all of the participants participating on Zoom. So this program is organized by our Vietnamese Dharma brothers and sisters. And so it's also being translated into Vietnamese. So for those of you who are here in person at the temple, also to know that we will pause. I will speak, and then it is being translated into Vietnamese and Spanish, the two languages. So when I pause, and when it's all quiet, those of you at the temple, if you have questions, you can ask me. I will try to answer. Otherwise, for all of us, if it's in a language that we don't understand, during the translation, it's a good time to kind of bring the mind back to this place, this spot, and reflect on what has been said. Not in a way that is like dissecting words, right? But in a way, in the spirit of like taking those words and say, you know, how does it help illuminate my situation, my experience? How is this relevant? How can I take this onto my own process? Traditional experience is, how do I take this onto the path? Very fancy expression, but it basically means, how does this become part of my process?
It's done.
So we will begin with the opening recitation. So in the different audio channels, we will read in the different languages one time. So if Christy, if you want to share screen for people who might want to look at that. Yeah, so we will do one time, read through this, and then we will come back to where I will chant in Tibetan, but we will begin first in the respective languages. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Now we can go back up to the top. Yes. So also with the Tibetan, I will chant one time each for what we had just repeated. Dhawa jebe da no bar jebe ge tarba dan tam je gembe bardu jo bara jeba tam je ge su jebe ma nang ka dang nyam pe sen chen tam je dewa dan de dung yao dan re ne de la na me ba yang da bara zo be chang ju rin pa je Tompare joy de je de sama geki bardu lunga isum kewala go mashi bardu lunga isum kewala go de derine sungde nema santa samgi bardu lunga isum kewala go Sonje chodang soge chonam la changju bardu dani kyabsu chi dagi jinsu ge be sonang ge rola benjer sanje drubra jo ma kadang nyampe senjen domje dewa dan dewe gundan dembra gurji dungyao dang dungyao gi gyudan dewa gurji dungyao mebe dewa dang me dewa gurji niring chadang nidang dewe tang nyong la nebar gurji. So before we start the teaching part of tonight's program, let us take a few moments to sit in meditation, and I will give some guidance, some prompts, some suggestions on what you can do with both body and mind during this short period that we're going to sit together. So body and mind, in the Buddhist tradition, body and mind are not seen as being at odds with each other. So in Buddhist meditation, we are not trying to transcend the body. We're not trying to achieve separation from the body or astral projection, anything like that. There are other spiritual systems that sort of understand or maybe even aim for experiences like that. But generally speaking, in the Buddhist tradition, we see body and mind as interdependent processes. So I said interdependent processes rather than interdependent things, because as it turns out, what we habitually, conventionally call body and what we habitually call mind, they are not two things. In fact, they only look like, two things if you stand far, far away. But if you look closer, you will see that what we think of as one thing, that we call body, if we really look closer, we'll see that it is a collection or an aggregate or a group of physical processes going on, constantly in flux. Cells are born, cells die every moment. And all the different parts in this body. Then when we look at the mind, it's also not one thing. It's a complex coming together of further interdependent conditions. And so that's why we say body is a grouping of processes, physical processes. Mind is an aggregate, a coming together of a web of processes, mental, emotional processes. So that's the first point to understand about body and mind, which will be elaborated in this short course for 6 weeks, these topics. Then the other key term or notion here is interdependence. So the body and mind are interdependent. That's their relationship. So within this relationship of interdependence, what happens to the body, all the processes there, affects the mind, all the processes there. And whatever happens on the mind side will impact the body as well. So when we understand the interdependence between body and mind, even just the general principle, then we can begin to explore and to have a deeper understanding of how, when the body is this way or that way, likely the mind is going to be this way or that way. And likewise, when the mind is this way and that way, likely the body is going to be this way or that way. So there's an interdependence. So then from that knowledge, from that understanding, then we can begin to kind of train to know, now, should I modify body or should I modify mind? Sometimes when we feel something is not right, to try to modify the mind to change the situation may or may not work. Sometimes, when we feel like something is not right, and then we try to change the body, but it also won't help. But generally speaking, for those of us with untrained minds, when we feel something is not right, and we are able to get physical, some people go for a run, go for a walk, do some yoga, some breathing exercise, generally it improves because we have no skill directly changing the mind. So we go from the direction of body. So then likewise in meditation, when we are going to do formal meditation, there is an emphasis on placing our body in the optimal posture that can promote the stability and the brightness of mind that we are trying to achieve on the mental emotional level. And so we always start with placing our body in that optimal position. So in terms of how to place the body, especially in the, as emphasized in the Tibetan tradition, there is a posture known as the posture of Vairochana, which has 7 elements. The name Vairochana means illuminator. So to call this posture the posture of the illuminator is to say, when we are able to place our body in this posture, then the mind can be bright and illuminating. Like this, Vairochana is also the name of a Buddha, the Buddha who is called the Illuminator. So in this way of sitting, there are 7 elements that we try to kind of align ourselves with these 7 elements. So these 7 elements, beginning from our legs. So it said that the most optimal kind of way of placing our legs is what's known as the Vajra posture. Vajra here connotes immovable. And so this is what we in the West would call the full lotus position, seated with your legs crossed in the full lotus position. That means, your right foot is placed on your left thigh and your left foot is resting on your right thigh. If you're not able to do that, which most of us probably are not able to, then you can place, your right leg on top of your left. And even if that's not comfortable, then just fold your legs together. And this is all talking about if you're seated on the floor. So we'll start with that first. So those are how you should sit. Now, the key point there is when you sit in the Vajra posture, and of course, this came from a culture where people sat on the ground without chairs all the time, right? So this is very natural to that context. So then, when you sit in this way, the main point why sitting in this way is emphasized is so that you're seated in a stable way. So what is emphasized here is that you are stable and you are not placing stress on one side of your body or the other side of your body or straining your spine. Yeah. So you need to sit, make sure that you sit in a way that is stable and with weight equally distributed. The second element is that your body should be upright. And so initially, you might even kind of pull up your spine, lengthen, pull up with tension a little bit, then rest down. pull up a little, and then let it naturally rest down. So holding just a little bit of tension so that you're not slouching. But all of this, the underlying principle needs to be relaxed, not rigid. So you are kind of slightly tweaking, slightly adjusting. Don't make any radical kind of forcing of the body, but be aware and listen to your body. So of the 7 points, these 2 points are, in a way, the most crucial. Stable horizontally and straight vertically. Because this is also related to these 2 qualities of mind that we are cultivating. A mind that is stable, so a mind that has weight, not a mind that is like a leaf, that wherever the wind blows, it just goes. So you want to build some weight, some strength, so that the mind can just remain unmoving. But it's not a Tao kind of unmoving. The other quality of mind we are also cultivating here is a mind that is bright, a mind that is radiant, a mind that is not fuzzy. And that is related to vertically seated in an upright. So the next point is actually the chest should be pulled back a little bit. It says it's like a lion or an eagle. So the chest should be open. So that's also related to straight. So think of this, as the seat of enlightenment. This is where you are going to awake. So turn up, in a way. You can say, turn up with dignity. Even you could say, turn up with pride, and take your seat. So for tonight, I'm just going to emphasize these 2 points out of the 7 points. Over the 6 weeks, we can pick up the other points. Otherwise, if give you too much, then instead of really settling your mind, you're busy figuring out, wait, did I get the 7? Yeah, so just these 2 points right now. Then if you're seated on like chairs, which many of us prefer to do that, no problem. But remember to apply these 2 principles. Now, one slight bad news. most chairs created are created bad. They're created to promote bad posture. I think chair makers are in cahoots with, back problem doctors. Somehow, I don't know, conspiracy theory maybe, right? And chairs are all created bad. They are created like with this slant to the back. And so they think the way we're going to make this comfortable is we'll make it slant to the back. So all the weight falls to the back, and then we're going to create this back that will support the back and then transfer the weight onto the chair. Basically, this is encouraging bad posture, right? And compensating for the problems that come from bad posture, rather than creating chairs that don't in the first place encourage bad posture. So there is a little bit of bad news. So especially like in the temple, if you're sitting on the pews, right? Feel free to pick up a cushion and do what he's doing and put it in the back to kind of push yourself a little bit further out so that you're not letting your weight kind of all go to the back and hopefully transfer to the pews. So feel free to just, take a cushion or two and kind of support the back and make sure that you're seated upright. Yeah. And then your legs are flat on the ground. And in that way, your weight is equally distributed. So tonight, just these 2 points. And one thing, habitual chair sitters. When you start meditation, you think it looks more impressive if I sit on the cushion. Very good. If you're inspired to do that, very good. But be careful. Don't bring your chair sitting habits into your floor sitting practice. And what do I mean by that? Then you're tempted when you look at your cushion that you're going to sit on, you're going to sit all the way to the back of the cushion. The cushion is not designed to support you that way. So then unknowingly, you are seated like that, and a lot of weight, a lot of pressure you're putting on your spine. Because our chair sitting habit is to sit all the way to the back. But when you do that with your cushion, you're going to have back injury if you sit like that a lot. So you should sit further to the front of the cushion. Almost like the cushion, the zafu is just tucked in, with most of the cushion kind of sticking out in the back. Almost. Of course, all body shapes are different. But just understand the principle. So that then, in a way, you can think of it as you're forming a tripod with your two knees area as the other 2 points. Weight is distributed between those 2 points and the back spine point. 3 points like this. Like that. So now I'm just going to ring the bell, and then we sit, just not long, just a few minutes, and we will just sit to kind of get the body into place. And as the body kind of falls into place, so to say, let the mind also fall into place. Let body and mind be in the same place. Just having that resolve, or having that goal, a very reachable goal, to say, for the next few moments, I want both body and mind to be in the same place. And so that means saying, I'm content. I will be content to not go anywhere, to just be here and present here. So just a few minutes. So last week, when we started this program, I said that first we need to do some definition of terms. We use words like meditation, mindfulness, and we all think we must mean the same thing. We must be talking about the same thing. But actually, it's not necessarily so. So if you were not here last week, we have recordings that are available on YouTube, and you can review the material there. But basically, the key things to remember from last week is what we call meditation. The Buddha's word for that is, there's a few words that the Buddha used that can be translated as meditation. But the primary, you could say the broadest category is this word called bhavana. And bhavana, a more literal translation is to cultivate. And then that term, bhavana, is usually used together with what are you cultivating? Chitta, chitta bhavana, cultivating, developing the mind, chitta bhavana. So that's the broadest category. Within chitta bhavana, there are different kind of, you could say, mental factors to develop. So one of it is called, one of it is what we now translate as mindfulness. Sati in Pali, smriti in Sanskrit. So we talked about that last week. In the most general use of this of the word sati or smriti, in the most general use, not yet what the Buddha wants us to cultivate, but in the most general use of the word, it simply means not to forget. Not to forget. So insofar as the ability to not forget, we don't even need to train in that, because I have not yet forgotten this person who accuse me of something. So I'm not forgetting that. So in that sense, I have sati, but this is unskillful sati. While coming over here to the center, this really rude driver cut me off, I'm still thinking of this person, how inconsiderate, how dangerous, So this is unskillful sati, unskillful not forgetting. Obviously, what the Buddha wants us to cultivate is skillful not forgetting, skillful sati. As for this skillful sati or smriti, this skillful not forgetting, whenever the Buddha starts talking about developing that kind of sati, he frequently brings in two other words. One word can be translated as energetic or ardent. In Pali is atapi. It's related to the notion of heat. Like, there's some heat in it, right? There's some energy. So this sati, not forgetting, has this quality associated along with ardency. You have interest, you have energy. Then the other side of this sati is related to this notion in the Pali language is called sampajana, which is to know clearly. Clearly about what? Clearly about the reality of the situation. How the situation actually reveals the reality of phenomena. Not, like who is right, who is wrong, not on that level. On the level of what are the basic characteristics of experience, which later we'll talk about it. Basically, the qualities of impermanence, not self, and stressful. These three qualities. We'll talk about that later. Right now, you might think, that kind of sounds bleak, sounds negative. Actually, Buddha says, not knowing them, things are really bleak. When you know them, then this is how you become free. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, now we come to the topic of breath. Breath. So to train in sati, the skillful sati that the Buddha taught, more than any other method that he taught, is the method of using breath. Now we have modern, technology with computer. If you do a scan of what are the different things, methods that the Buddha taught most consistently, meaning in more than one place, more than one text, more than one sutta, is actually this topic of breath, and specifically the topic of breath in 16 steps. Other teachings, other methods might be taught in one, recorded in one text, or two texts, or three. But this topic of breath turns up again and again. And these 16 steps turns up many times in different places. So we know that this was probably the main method that the Buddha recommended. Then, individuals with particular kind of issues, or obstacles, he might say, you sweep. There's one case where he says, you just sweep. And that was that monk's meditation, sweeping the forest floor. But that's peculiar to that person. What the Buddha seemed to have recommended to a more general audience is breath. I was joking with the people in the temple. I said, that was just, a demonstration of the downsides of lack of mindfulness. So did not turn on the microphone. So breath, the Buddha taught as this supreme object. Now, let's say a little bit about breath. And this is in part based on current non-religious scientific studies on breath and the effect of breath on our health and on our mental emotional states. So we know that, basically an average person, each day we more or less take 25,000 inhalations and 25,000 exhalations. So about 50,000 if you add inhalation and exhalations for an average person. When we inhale, negative pressure draws blood into the heart. And so when we breathing, it's also our blood circulates. So when we're inhaling, the negative pressure while we're inhaling draws blood into the heart. When we exhale, blood shoots back out into the body and into the lungs. So this, right, this blood that is coursing through our arteries and our veins, when we breathe in and breathe out, one cycle of it going through all the arteries and veins is about 1 minute long. And on average, the equivalent of 2,000 gallons or 7,500 liters of blood is moving. Isn't that much work going on? Then from the perspective of this basic, right, basic property of the body, which is breathing, even more basic than food, than water, than anything, is breathing, right? From the perspective of this basic property of the body called breathing, then you can say that basically the body is a system of tubes. But in ancient Indian analysis of this, they call these the nadis, which is the channels, energy channels. But scientifically, if you cut open a body, what you can see are actually, with microscope, are these tubes. So these tubes vary in size, right? So your throat, your nasal passage, your throat, your sinuses, these are big tubes. Then there are these smaller tubes that go into your lungs and branch out and out and out and out. If you arrange, right, all these tubes in a straight line, you know how long it is? I was surprised when they 1,500 miles, over 2,400 kilometers of tubes in this body, and oxygen is moving in these 1,500 miles of tubes. In one inhalation, 1,500 miles. Then as you exhale, it brings out primarily carbon dioxide and other some like moisture, and it comes out. And again, traveling 1,500 miles, 2,400 kilometers. Wow. There's a lot more that can be said about this topic. For example, so the heart is the thing that pumps, right? Blood into all the places it needs to go. Yeah. Then breath, what pulls it in and what lets it out is the diaphragm. And so those are the muscles that sits beneath the lungs. So diaphragm, when you exhale, right, your diaphragm lifts. And so then the lungs shrink. When you are inhaling, your diaphragm drops. And then your lungs expand. And so remember the 25,000 inhalation, 25,000 exhalation? So 50,000 times your diaphragm is lifting, falling back, lifting, falling back. And research has shown, for the most part, most of us use less than 10% of the range of this diaphragm. Therefore, putting stress on the heart to do all the work. So stressing the heart and raising blood pressure. So research into breath have shown that what we are suffering from, a lot of our health problems come from breathing too fast, breathing too much, too fast and too much. The same with food. Eating too fast, eating too much. Our modern problem is breathing too fast, breathing too much. Ironically, as human brains become bigger, right? Real estate became more rare. And so our nasal passage from like maybe 5,000-6,000 years ago, at least, went through this dramatic change. So then many of us also have problems with our nasal passage. So then as a result, a lot of us breathe with our mouth. But the more we don't use the nose, the more it shuts down. So again, all kinds of health problems come from there. So the Buddha Whether he understood directly this topic or not, we don't know. He never directly spoke this way, but he chose breath. And when you look at the 16 steps of cultivating the breath, you'll see that I would argue that, yes, he knew. He knew about the power of breath. So of the 16 steps, the first 4 steps, next week we will look at it in more detail. The first 4 steps, out of the first 4 steps, you can divide into 2 parts. The first part is he is turning our attention to breath itself. He says, learn to become friends with your breath. Right now, breath is a stranger to you. So you turn your attention to breath, give breath your attention, become friends with your breath. The second part, the next 2 steps, is when he teaches us how to use breath to calm the body, to quiet down the body. What I would call to teach us how to reduce inflammation, which is another problem with our bodies. It's in a constant state of being inflamed. In fact, the Buddha taught one teaching which is called everything is on fire. He says our senses are on fire. Our sense experiences are on fire. Our mental, emotional processes are on fire. Everything is on fire. He says we need to cool it down, cool it down, cool it down. So I would also argue the Buddha knew about inflammation. Inflammation of the body, inflammation of the mind. And he taught breath meditation as a way to tranquilize, to calm down. So first he taught us how to prep both body and mind, and to place body and mind in a good place, in a relaxed place, in a healthy place. Then only we begin to go into understanding the deeper things that we have to see, such as those 3 things I mentioned: impermanence, not self, and suffering. Don't touch those things right now, because yes, if you touch them, it's all bad news. It will cause more inflammation. First, settle body and mind. Those are the first 4 steps. So of the 16 steps that are taught in the Anapanasati Sutta, the first 4 is said to pertain directly to the body. How to kind of calm the body. Then the next 4 steps pertains to first, kind of developing enough mental sharpness, right, to see the 3 basic types of sensations. Whenever we come into contact through sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, when our senses are in contact with the object of senses, 3 types of sensations or feelings come very immediately, which is like, dislike, or neutral. So the next 4 step of this 16-step meditation is directed towards seeing how we habitually get hooked and trapped into immediately liking, not liking, or ignorant, don't care, neutral in an ignorant way. Then the next 4 step pertains to more subtle mental emotional states. Then the final 4 relates to what's called dharma. That means phenomena as they are. The characteristics of our experiences. Like what are some of the important common characteristics of the whole range of experiences that we have. So the last 4 is where finally we can become free. So these are the 16 steps. So starting next week, we will look at the text itself. So those of you who are out on Zoom or those you're coming to the temple, we have some copies here. But if you're out participating on Zoom, make sure you have at least one of the translations of the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutta for starting next week, where we'll go through. So the remainder 4 classes will be anchored on this Anapanasati Sutta. Now, for those of you who, in case, after last week, this week, you're like, no, I'm not going to continue. In case, you reach that conclusion, no problem, of course. But I want to give you something that at least you can take with you that might be useful for you. Remember I said, like in the current research, scientific research about breath and problems that at least physical and I would say mental, emotional problems that, because when we're physically unwell, mental, emotionally, we're also all over the place. So based on this current, most recent research, I said that the main problem is that we breathe too fast, right? And too much, right? So they've also found out that the optimal kind of length of inhalation and exhalation, not when there's something wrong and you need to fix that problem, but on a regular basis. If you can try to have your inhalation and exhalation to be generally 5.5 seconds to 6, that is said to be optimal for optimal health, mental and physical health. 6 seconds inhalation, 6 seconds exhalation. So many of you I know are participating because you are part of the Drigong Kagyu Tibetan Buddhist lineage. So this is what you can do. That mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, the 6-syllable mantra. Try to sing it with your breath. Especially that tune, I find, a very popular tune. I think it's a modern tune. I don't think it's an old tune, but doesn't matter. Here it works very nicely. So if you can mentally, right, as you breathe in, you mentally sing Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. This is basically about 5.5 to 6 seconds. So breathe in, Om Mani Padme Hum. Breathe out, Om Mani Padme Hum, with that tune. Then you begin to regulate your breath. So that's something you can take with you if you decide, I'm not coming for the next 4 classes. So at least you have not wasted these 2 last week, all that precious time, We all have limited time. So I see that there was a question. I don't know if the question is still there. Somebody raised their hand with a question. So maybe here we can take a couple of questions before we end with the dedication. You can type your question. You can unmute to ask your question as well.
If anyone has a question, you can unmute yourself.
Any questions? Comment?
Or not yet.
If there are no questions, then
How about
we should.
one?
Oh, okay. Good.
They asked about the text. First, they asked about the text. I think the text is from your center website, right?
Oh, yes. Yes. So if somebody, Javier or Omar, whoever, if you can share the link on the chat, and I do have on there one text, the Vietnamese translation of the sutra is available for download there. But generally, any translation is okay, because all translations have here, there, a little bit of difference. So when we look at it, together, then we can ask questions, we can clarify. But if somebody from Dugon Dharmakirti, if you can share the link of the resource that we have, the text and also the Spanish text, if Andres, if you want to share in the chat the link, that would be wonderful. And Christy, if you have any text that people can download, also share, that would be wonderful.
Actually, I tried to share in chat, but I cannot share the.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, then somebody can share the link that we have.
Yeah. Okay.
Then
I
they.
have one question here.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to meditate lying down?
Yes. So good question. Is it possible to do formal meditation while lying down? Yes, actually, not so common. Yes, not so common. The Buddha talked about 4 postures in which we can train our mind. And basically, when you look at what are these 4 postures, then it covers all postures. So he says, while standing, while walking, while seated, while lying down. He says, in all these 4 postures, you can meditate, you can cultivate your mind. But when it comes to like formal practice, then mainly seated, to some degree, walking. Standing and lying down are possible, but not direct, not so like commonly taught. The lying down one is, of course, there is the quick danger of falling asleep. But if you have a physical, right, challenge, a problem, right, and you cannot sit, the way that even if it says the best way to sit is this, that, but if your body cannot, then you cannot. But don't be discouraged. because you can meditate while you're lying down.
There are 3 kinds of knowing. What is the third one you mentioned?
Yeah, let's wait. Thank you. Let's wait for the translators doing the hard work that they're doing.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, what? Thank you. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Oh, Christina, can you read Vietnamese? There's a long question in Vietnamese.
Yeah, but we have a couple of questions in front of that. We have to follow the order.
Yes, yes, exactly. So Christy, you can help with that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And some people also raise hands. So Christy, please direct traffic. You will be our traffic police. Thank you.
Christy ơi, em có câu hỏi đó không ạ?
Em đợi còn 2 câu nữa xong tới em nha.
Dạ, cảm ơn chị.
Okay, go ahead, Christy. The next question.
Can you repeat the distribution of the 4x4 tips of breathing?
Yes, so I think you're talking about, so this is the 16 steps. The first 4 steps is training related to body. The next 4 training related to what's known as sensation of like, dislike, and neutral. The third set of 4 is training in recognizing all the different mental emotional states, knowing what are skillful and what are unskillful, what to cultivate and what to drop. And then the last 4 sets is the kind of to see the reality of all existence, including external existence, internal existence. And by knowing those those dharmas, we become free. And so these are the 4. And so these are also what's known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Kaya, Vedana, Chitta, Dhamma. Next.
The next question from Linda. She asked about 3 kinds of knowing. What's it?
Yeah, right. I don't remember what was the context of the 3 kinds of knowing. Did I talk about it? Maybe Linda, you can clarify, or Andres.
Linda, can you ask?
Right. The three characteristics, not three kinds of knowing, but three things we should know. That all phenomena are characterized, all experience, all phenomena are characterized by what's called suffering or dukkha. And this dukkha, all these experiences, they are also characterized by uncertainty, or sometimes called, translated as impermanence. And the third, no matter what experiences they are, no matter what it is that you think is going on, it's not you, which is not self. And so these are the three things that we should know, and to know deeply and to know directly. And this is the fourth of the four sets. Next, Christy.
Diệp.
Dạ.
Em hỏi thầy đi.
Dạ vâng ạ. Chính nhân dịch giúp chị nha. Em muốn hỏi là em thấy rằng là thiền Vipassana nó là một trong những cái nền tảng của thiền trong Phật giáo, và đó cũng là lý do mà sư tổ đã bắt đầu cũng khởi xướng và cũng bắt đầu phát triển thiền Vipassana. Nhưng mà đối với những người mà tu kim cang thừa thì bên cạnh thiền Vipassana thì là còn có thiền là thiền bổn tôn, rồi thiền đại thủ ấn. Vậy thì em muốn hỏi là cái mối liên kết giữa hai cái thiền này với nhau như thế nào, và nó bổ trợ cho nhau như thế nào? Thiền Vipassana là cái tiền đề như thế nào đối với thiền đại thủ ấn? Và em muốn thầy phân tích rõ hơn về cái mối liên kết này, để mà đối với những người mà họ có thể là chưa thực sự hiểu về kim cang thừa, nhưng họ đã thực hành thiền Vipassana trước đây, thì họ cũng có thể khế hợp hoặc là phát triển thêm để mà bước vô thiền đại thủ ấn dựa trên những cái nền tảng của thiền Vipassana. Thì em muốn hỏi ở đây là muốn thầy phân tích sâu hơn và kỹ hơn về mối liên kết giữa hai cái thiền này và sự bổ trợ của nó đối với nhau như thế nào, đối với một người muốn tu thiền và đi càng ngày càng đi cao lên, đi sâu hơn, thì cái sự hỗ trợ nó như thế nào?
Cái câu hỏi của Diệp đó là câu hỏi của cả toàn khóa học đó Diệp. Chứ có nghĩa là mình sẽ học từng bước ở từng bài, nhưng mà không biết là chánh nhân làm sao để nói với thầy câu hỏi được. First quiz was how our translator can raise the question for you. So she have a question about the Vipassana. We are studying right now about the basic of Vipassana. So what's the relationship between Vipassana and the deity meditation and Mahayana Mahamudra relation? How to apply it? Yeah, I that we want to study more for the next section. But can you tell her a little bit about that?
So maybe in the next few classes it will become clearer and clearer. But here I think what the question is, like, there is like what is known as Vipassana meditation. And then in like Tibetan Buddhist practice, there's like meditating on the deity, like meaning a Buddha, visualizing yourself as a Buddha. Then there's also like Mahamudra meditation or Dzogchen meditation. So how are these related, if they are related, you know? So first of all, I think like right now there is a movement. I call it a movement because it's not like just one place, one person, but there is a movement that promotes a meditation that is identified as Vipassana. But Vipassana, that name, that term, what that word means is special view. But special view, not in the sense of like special with, you know, like rainbows, special, but like clear seeing. In other words, clear seeing. V is like Vipassana, is like heightened seeing. So in this context, it means to see clearly. Now, these days, that word Vipassana is used to describe basically a specific form of meditation using slightly different techniques, but primarily taught by Buddhist teachers in Burma, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Laos. So the Theravada tradition. But the practice of Vipassana, to see clearly, it's in every form of Buddhist practice. It's in the practice of visualizing yourself as a deity. It's in the practice of Mahamudra. It's in the practice of Dzogchen, if you're familiar with those terms, because what all these practices basically are developing or helping us is to achieve those two qualities that I talked about. First quality, the mind is stable, not easily moved, so that you don't get dragged around by your emotions, by your experiences. The mind is stable. In fact, that is what is known as shamatha, or calm abiding. Then the other quality of mind is simply the mind is unmoving. It's not yet there, or rather it's not very practical. So when the mind does move, but not move because it has no control, but because you want to move, it has to move with clear view, clear seeing. And that is the Vipassana part. So in fact, this method, this SHRAVASTI meditation, the 16 steps and the particular way the 16 steps is done according to the head of our order, His Holiness the Drigung Kyabgun, the one who developed this SHRAVASTI meditation. Both shamatha and Vipassana are cultivated hand in hand. So he doesn't call this Vipassana meditation, because only clear seeing without stability, also not very useful, because it can come and go very quickly. So you need clear seeing, Vipassana, and you need shamatha. And in deity practice, those two elements are there. In Mahamudra practice, those two elements are there. So unfortunately, tonight we have already reached our time. So let's maybe save some of the other good questions for next week. So we will end with dedication and just do the short Bodhichitta dedication. And also much thanks to both the interpreter, Abraham translating into Vietnamese, and Andreas translating into Spanish. Thank you so much. So now we'll just do this Bodhichitta dedication. It says, excellent and precious Bodhichitta, which is the altruistic mind, altruistic heart, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. Changchu sem cho rinpoche ma ge pa nang ge yu chi ke pa nyam pa me pa ya gong ne gong du pe war shu. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Bodhidam, for hosting this and organizing this. Thank you, Christy, so much for your hard work. And I'll see all of you next week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias,
Thank you,
Lai.
Che.
Gracias,
Thank you,
Vietnam.
translator. Thank you for all.
Gracias.